probably the best example is when I took sort of Tyrrells around the world, and the one place I thought first of all was France, and I thought things like we're making these parsnips in Parmesan crisps, so we're making these, which I thought would have sold really well in France, and they didn't go, they bombed. And then I found out the parsnips are like a pig food there, there's no respect for them, they don't want them. So it's you have to be in it. So my point is here.
Be in it. That's
to win
such a good point. Be in the trenches.
And so you have to get out there, get with your customers. It's like the most important thing for me in this business are anything at all. And what I love about dealing with independent retailers, they don't talk about money, they just talk about your product. So the most important customers for me are independents, is looking after where your roots, where you come from. And like national accounts, big customers just want to buy it for money and volumes, and they just want stats and cash. But small little independents, their lives depend on it. So they'll sell products they love and they buy into. So your customers, or even if it's D2C, D2C is a massive thing now. If you can get your D2C right and get subscribers, first of all, like to describe, you want people to describe to let you in, to let you tell their story. But the second thing is then if you can get subscribers to pay to buy your story physically, your product, and your product is important in their life where they need it regularly every month, then that's the secret to success. That is the secret sauce. So I just think customer service, you can never, ever do too much. And that's always been my biggest trouble with sales and marketing and building a brand, is trying to get everybody into that ethos that you can never do too much for your... One thing that really annoys me now at the moment is you go on websites where you suddenly want to buy something, you can't just pick up the phone and ring them. There are so many companies now that just don't want you to... I was listening to this podcast the other day on digital marketing and the biggest mistake everybody makes is they make these lovely adverts and that, but they don't want anybody to come back to them with, it's a reaction for an investment. You want a reaction. If you're going to send you don't just want to put a podcast out and get nothing back. You want a criticism. You want, whether it's good criticism, bad criticism, but we all need criticism and testimonials, and that to me is the excitement. I want people to ring us and tell us what the product does for it, if we can make it better, if we can do anything differently, and that's where I think it all comes from.
I think the word "be in it" is really important, because that "be in it" is the link between the management and the luck. When you're being in it, when you're being in the trenches, when you're walking, is it Sam Walton who did Walmart, walk the floor?
Yes,
is the famous thing. He's like, he is being in it, and he's been able to like put his sort of hands into all the kind of the different pockets to really extract out as much information as possible. And I think it's so easy to get distracted and kind of think, as you get bigger, my role is not to go and be in the trenches per se. The other thing that Napoleon did very well was he talked about the flex of strategy,
because he was in it. He was there at the front line. He was there with it. He knew.
Because I've only literally got into why was Napoleon so important?
Well, he just knew everything was going on. He was in it, wasn't he? He was there. He had his finger on the pulse. He was, and I think that's where it was at the final battle, wasn't it? It was quite interesting how it's all about tactics, wasn't it? All about tactics and strategy and how to judge that the other people. So if you're building a brand, it's the market and where everybody else is in the market, and it's always never be jealous. What was that? Was one of Bill Gates' big sayings, wasn't it? It's never be jealous of the competition. And that's probably one thing that a lot of brands and a lot of people get quite jealous. I agree with that as well.
What do you mean by never be jealous of the competition?
Well, never be looking at the competition all the time and seeing what they're doing and being jealous of them. You've got to only be jealous of them probably if they're doing something that you're not, but you should be doing things that they're not.
You do you.
I think that summary of that was I did a thing in China once, and there was about registering brands. And in China, you're not allowed to register a brand for at least 5 years before you've been up and running. And these Chinese guys I was talking to, they said it's a good thing because it makes us improve. We love people copying our goods because then next year it makes us make it better all the time. So they're always going up a scale. So I think you can always make it better. You know, if you've got your Formula One car out and you've won a race, you don't just stop. You've constantly got to make that car better and better and more efficient. And with a brand, it's got to constantly evolve, and give its customers, all the best brands that work, then they're restless. If you look at anything, and probably Apple would be at the top of this for innovation and being.
Well, but look how much they've stagnated post Steve Jobs dying, because
Exactly.
they've lost the Napoleon.
Yeah, but they didn't like him because the corporates thought he was too crazy. He was probably they'd put him in the crazy box.
Yeah.
And they never. The best part about the Steve Jobs story I like was the fact that he used to paint all the inside of the computers different colours.
Yeah.
And that's the bit they really used to despair on, wasn't it? Because it was just for the engineers. So when the engineers took one to bits, there's always a yellow one or it's a green one. Or
it was the inside. But I think that point's very clever from a being in its perspective and the leadership. Is it's how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think it's a signal of perfection and building that culture.
Yeah.
But I also think I actually think the best lesson for brand builders is actually just to go and listen to the Beatles discography or whatever the fuck, all their albums, and you just see how they evolve. Mm-hmm. And it's still, they keep their brand DNA, they keep the Beatles, it's still John Lennon and McCarthy. But, if you look at obviously you've got the early kind of happy clappy stuff. Then it gets really kind of crazy when they start taking all the acid and shit like that, and but it evolves. And I think that's in terms of brands. The brands need to start, but it needs to constantly be restless and evolving.
Exactly.
And so many bands, just the ones that die are the ones that don't evolve.
Exactly. So probably one of the best examples would be something like Peugeot. And if you asked anybody today what's a Peugeot, they say it's a car. And it wasn't a car. It started out as a ladies' corset or something, wasn't it? Or as
really?
Didn't they used to make corsets or something? Apparently, I don't know which came first, the corsets or the bicycles. But then they made Peugeot bikes apparently for a long time. But the most famous thing Peugeots have made over the years are the Peugeot salt and pepper grinders. So
Peugeot do salt and pepper grinders?
They do, and they have done. So most kitchens and most really. The taste is that if you've got a Peugeot salt and pepper grinder, and they made so many, they made millions of them. But it's an interesting thing with a brand, how from bicycles to corsets to cars, how that brand's evolved. And so if you'd ask most people what they make today, to other brands like Tabasco, that's a fantastic brand, how they own the hot sauce market globally. And they haven't done a great deal of innovation, but they've just done constant fine-tuning of enough things. So, and if you think of other brands, there's the short race and the long race, and that's why I thought with this business it'd be great to build a brand that could have 100-year. You've got to have a 100-year business plan. I think if you've got a 100-year business plan, then you've got something that's sustainable. It's not a fad. And the beautiful thing about this is it's been around for thousands of years before. So you're not actually, you haven't got a new potion that is scientifically proven or whatever, there's nothing like something that's been around since, was back to Hippocrates' time, wasn't it, with vinegars? And he said, let food be thy medicine. And it was, it's how food's evolved since then.
You're saying right now you're kind of in crazy learning mode. What are what's your burning curiosity? Where's that pulling you to? Is that into what are you learning at the minute? Because I think it's interesting.
The whole gut to mental, the whole gut.
Yeah. So tell me, because imagine I am basically a dumb 3-year-old. I don't know much about it.
but it was as that wonderful woman said, we are what we eat.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
But so say I start necking that, probably not all in one hit. Mm-hmm. But what's that doing to me to make my mental health better?
The first thing, it's your whole body digestion. It's with a brand isn't just a product. It's the knowledge that it gives you as well. So it's everything that follows that goes with it. But it's the most important thing is your digestion, your pH. The pH is something people have hardly spoken about. As a farmer, soil. This is why I love the whole sort of regenerative farming now. It's caring for the soil. So that the soil microbiome to the gut microbiome, it's so close.
What's the microbiome?
So your microbiome is all your microbes in the soil, how they get from the soil into your gut through the food. So if we've had lots of things from pasteurizing to many different ways of treating food, probably even from freezing's okay, it's helped, but there's nothing like fresh microbes. And if you listen to Tim Spector or anybody talking about this, it's those microbes, and it's your gut microbes in your gut. There's far more good bacteria than bad bacteria. A lot of people think the bacteria is all bad, and it's all the Dettol babies, and they don't understand that the majority of your body is made up of good bacteria, And the bad bacteria only feeds off things like ultra-processed sugar and things. So if you keep the ultra-processed sugar and the sweeteners and all the bad things out and the alcohol, your good bacteria will reign. And your good bacteria is your mental wellness. So it's the simple things that I think we've lost. Things like your pH, it's your balance.
Now, what does the pH do to your mental health?
It's whether people get heartburn or different. Your pH is just like it's just like a line. If you're a farmer with your soil, you have to have your pH. It mustn't be too acid and it mustn't be too alkaline. And it's the same with your body. If you go eating too much ultra-processed and bad foods, you're gonna knock your pH out. So,
didn't you meet? I saw on your Instagram you met Tim Spector.
Yeah.
Did you go on like one of his courses or something like that?
Yeah, I met him a few times. And
What's he like?
Yeah, I think he's done an amazing job to put simply gut health at the top. Just like eating 30 different plants every week, eating the rainbow, eating fermented foods, cutting out the sugar, all the basics is. I think he's probably done more for awareness than anybody has in a long time.
Espressos is sponsored by supply chain software gurus Unleashed. It talks to your eComm and accounting software. It's helped islands cut admin time in half, get granular clarity on your margins, know where your stock is, don't miss availability. Brands like Candy Kittens, Tiny Rebel and Trip all use Unleashed, and so should you.